Welcome to our confession, where one woman turned the kitchen refrigerator into a luxury pharmacy, her credit card limit into a crime scene, and still failed to lose either weight or ego. So go ahead and like, subscribe, and brace yourself, because this story has the kind of twist that makes even a digital scale want to quit. Today's post came from Danielle, a 36-year-old woman who confessed to spending $50,000 on weight loss pens over the course of 18 months, and the final result was almost poetic, if poetry were written by a lone shark with an eating disorder. Danielle said she lost 11 pounds, gained back 15, developed an obsession with labels, spent the equivalent of a decent car, and, in her own words, still have the same body, only poorer and more humiliated. According to Danielle, the spiral began at her cousin's wedding. She wasn't the bride, the maid of honor, or the star of the party, but her family had always found a wonderfully democratic way to turn any event into the humiliation Olympics. Her mother, Dolores, specialized in those old-school passive-aggressive comments disguised as concern, never to direct, always served in that elegant silverware poison style. "That dress is lovely. Such a shame it clings so much. You have such a pretty face. If you slim down a little, you look like a doll. Your sister Delilah inherited the family's discipline. Adorable. About as warm and inviting as a lace-covered electric chair." Danielle said that, up until adolescence, she had never had a serious problem with her body. She wasn't magazine thin, but she also wasn't at war with the mirror. The real trouble came after her second pregnancy. A silent depression, sleepless nights, a remote job that glued her to a chair, and a husband named Derek who never said anything openly cruel, but held an advanced degree in compliments that sounded suspiciously like criticism. When she asked his opinion on clothes, he'd say things like, "That one hides things pretty well," or, "This photo turned out great. Your face looks much slimmer." The sort of man who never plunges in the knife himself. He outsources the job to his wife's self-esteem and walks away with clean hands. That was when Delilah entered the picture. The younger sister, a wellness influencer, queen of beige filters. The kind of woman who posts half a squeezed lemon in water and calls it a healing ritual. Delilah worked as the unofficial poster girl for a boutique aesthetic clinic called Dovetail Wellness, which sold everything from vitamin infusions to precision metabolic resets. That phrase alone deserved jail time. Danielle said her sister swore those weight loss pens had changed the lives of actresses, lawyers, exhausted mothers, dentists, realtors, anxious people, sad people, and probably even some emotionally fragile golden retrievers somewhere. According to Delilah, the point wasn't weight loss. The point was finally becoming who you've always been inside, which, translated from charlatanesy, meant pay first, cry later. Danielle resisted for a few months. She said she didn't want to go down a chemical shortcut. Delilah gave a little laugh and said calling medication a shortcut was something only uninformed people said. Then she sent before and after photos of clients, progress charts, screenshots of testimonials, videos of doctors in perfectly pressed scrubs, and a referral code that supposedly gave a discount on a VIP program. Danielle booked a consultation. The consultation became tests. The tests became a quarterly plan. The quarterly plan became a subscription. The subscription became a higher dose. The higher dose became a change in formula. The formula change became supplements to fight side effects. She wasn't even getting properly enough to deserve, because apparently even being scammed required more effort than her body was willing to give. In the first month, Danielle paid a little over $3,000. She thought it was outrageous. By the second, she was already close to $5,000 because the clinic told her her body was inflamed and resistant. By the third, they suggested adding nutritional monitoring, lipotropic shots, B12 injections, hormone patches, compounded capsules for cravings, a performance probiotic, a coaching app, and a smart scale that was basically very expensive Bluetooth-enabled lying. Danielle paid for all of it, because by then, she wasn't buying weight loss anymore. She was buying hope on an installment plan. She said that, at first, the placebo effect was so strong she almost lost weight from sheer optimism. She got excited, took mirror selfies, pulled out clothes she had stored away, bought a smaller pair of jeans, and started calling her routine her rebuilding phase. But the weeks passed and nothing significant happened. Sometimes she ate less for 2 days, then was ravenous on the third. Sometimes the number on the scale dropped to pounds, only to jump back up by 3. The clinic said that was normal. Delilah said her body was complex. Derek said real treatment took time. Everyone had a ready-made answer. It was basically a cult just with insulated packaging and delivery fees. The most disturbing part was that Danielle was terrified of needles. So, many times, her husband was the one who injected the pens for her. Derek did it with an almost romantic calmness. He prepared the syringe or pen, cleaned the spot, spoke in a soft voice, said he was proud of her for not giving up on herself. Imagine that. The man sounded like a bunker coach. And the worse Danielle felt, the more he took over the logistics. He stored the boxes in the second fridge in the garage, noted the dates, tracked refills, checked deliveries. According to Danielle, he became the manager of my failure over the course of 18 months. She tried different formulas, different dosages, and even compounded versions when name brand stock ran out. The clinic always had a narrative ready. If she wasn't losing weight, it was because she was eating too little and her body had gone into shutdown. If she ate more, it was because insulin spikes were sabotaging everything. If she slept badly, it was cortisol. If she slept well, then probably her gut wasn't responsive. If she was menstruating, it was water retention. If she wasn't, it was hormonal dysfunction. In short, the treatment was never at fault. The treatment was sacred. The blame always landed on her body. This lazy employee who refused to cooperate with the clinic's PowerPoint presentation. Danielle said she hid the real amount she was spending from almost everyone. Derek knew. Delilah knew. Her accountant probably had a silent mini-stroke, but said nothing. To her mother, she said she was doing follow-up care. To her friends, she said it was new medication. To herself, she kept repeating that if there were no results, she would stop next quarter. The next quarter became another one. Then another. Apparently rock bottom offers auto-renewal. The bomb exploded when Derek left a credit card statement on the counter. Danielle was looking for a coupon from her daughter's school, found the bill instead, and saw a string of charges from Dovetail Wellness, the clinic's partner pharmacy, a refrigerated delivery company, and a supplement boutique that looked like it sold Serenity in capsules, and fraud in ribbon-tied boxes. She added it all up. $50,380. Danielle said she stared at the number as if it might rise from the page and apologize. It didn't. She confronted Derek that very same night. According to Danielle, he didn't deny anything because there's no denying math. Instead, he got furious that she had chosen this moment to make a scene in front of the kids. Always elegant when a scoundrel switches the topic from the fire itself to the tone of the alarm. Then he said the amount only looked worse than it was because it included tests, appointments, fees, deliveries, and complimentary products. As if saying, it wasn't just the pens, it was the full deluxe scam package. Somehow made it classier. The truly insane part came next. Danielle said that during the argument, Derek tossed out a line that stuck to her brain like gum in a carpet. You're not helping either. When you keep snacking after 10, according to her. That destabilized her because, yes, sometimes she did channel anxiety into food at night, but not nearly enough to justify 18 months of pathetic results and $50,000 evaporating into thin air. So, she did what any humiliated, broke, internet-connected person would do. She went to Reddit. The commenters wasted no time. One user wrote that $50,000 on weight loss pens wasn't treatment. It was student loan debt without the degree. Another said nobody cared whether the story was sad. The point was simple. Either the clinic was a fraud, or Danielle wasn't getting what she thought she was getting, or everyone around her was a criminal and she was the last one to find out. One woman said she used the very same medication and spent only a fraction of that. She said that even at an expensive doctor's office, that amount was absurd. According to her, Danielle wasn't being treated. She was being milked. Then a pharmacist jumped into the thread and asked an important question. Had Danielle checked the pen lot numbers? Did the packages come sealed? Did she inject them herself? Did she feel the expected effects, reduced appetite, nausea, constipation, anything? Because, according to him, if the answer was no, it smelled like fraud. And not the scent of metabolic inflammation, either. It smelled like rotten people. Danielle replied that the lot numbers had never been checked. That many deliveries arrived already arranged in a thermal pouch from the clinic. That Derek often grabbed the boxes before she even saw them. And that, now that she thought about it, it was strange how she almost never felt anything strong. Sometimes mild nausea, sometimes nothing at all. Her appetite would go down for a day or two and then return. She had thought she had somehow failed at that too. That was it. Reddit, which usually functions like a public square holding Wi-Fi and a torch, smelled blood. Before the heavier advice rolled in, there were also those comments that are cruel but helpful. One woman bluntly asked whether Danielle had actually followed a diet, or whether she was living on salad at lunch and pantry raids after midnight. Danielle replied that, yes, there had been binge episodes, but that she had also spent months weighing food, counting protein, walking 8,000 steps a day, avoiding sugar, avoiding alcohol, and living in that delightful mental state where a person looks at a banana as if it were a federal crime. Another user asked whether she had at least lost inches, since sometimes weight can be misleading. Danielle said no. Her clothes were still tight. Her face hadn't slimmed down. Her stomach was unchanged. And the only thing that had truly gotten smaller was her savings account. One highly upvoted comment told her to stop arguing with her husband, grab a sealed pen, take it to a lab or a serious pharmacy, and verify the lot, origin, composition, everything. Another suggested reviewing the garage security footage. Another asked why Delilah, her oh-so-helpful sister, kept coming in and out of the house carrying a thermal bag. Danielle replied that her sister had a spare key for emergencies and help with the kids. The internet nearly fell out of its chair. 2 days later, Danielle came back with an update. She said she followed the advice and separated 3 items, a supposedly new pen, an empty box, and a package with a visible lot number. She called the manufacturer whose label appeared on the box. The lot matched a legitimate product, but the serial number had been associated with a sale to a clinic in another state months earlier. The company didn't confirm fraud, but immediately recommended that she stop using everything and seek an independent professional. Danielle also took one of the pens to a specialized pharmacy. Through a contact from a friend's sister-in-law, the pharmacist didn't perform a full chemical analysis on the spot, because reality still insists on having procedures, but he noted very charming details. First, the pen was not from the original manufacturer listed on the box. Second, the liquid's viscosity seemed incompatible with that specific formulation. In plain English, the pen and the packaging were about as convincing a match as a politician. And honestly, when Danielle confronted Delilah over the phone, her sister did what every emotional scam artist does when the music stops. She got offended. She said it was absurd, that Danielle was paranoid, that the clinic worked with logistical substitutions, and that ignorant patients loved playing CSI whenever results took too long. But Delilah made the classic mistake of the arrogant guilty. She talked too much. She said Derek always checked everything and that if there was any problem, Danielle should talk to him. Danielle hadn't even mentioned Derek during the call. Delilah threw the husband into the fire for free, probably because she had grown far too used to sharing the barbecue. Danielle then checked the garage cameras, and at that point the story decided to release the handbrake and roll downhill. In footage from several Sundays, Derek appeared receiving refrigerated deliveries. So far, nothing new. But in more than one recording, Delilah showed up soon afterward. Sometimes she came in through the side entrance. Sometimes Derek handed her a little black thermal bag. In one video, he gave her the bag. The two of them laughed. And Delilah literally kissed him on the face. Not a sister-in-law kiss. Not a grateful kiss. A kiss from someone who had completely stopped fearing hell, because she assumed parking would be validated there. Danielle said she watched it all in silence. No crying, no screaming, no scene. Just that coldness that comes when the brain finally realizes it has spent months trying to solve an equation whose numbers were all fake. She wrote that the worst part wasn't finding out about the affair. It was realizing she had spent a year and a half blaming her own body for sabotage produced inside the family. In the comments, Reddit burst into spontaneous combustion. People were calling Derek and Delilah Bonnie and Clyde of endocrinology. One comment said Danielle had not bought $50,000 worth of pens. She had financed her sister's body and her husband's motel bill. Another user summed it up brutally. The husband was injecting saline into his wife, bringing the real medication to his mistress sister-in-law, and still had the nerve to comment about snacking after 10. If there were a Nobel Prize for domestic villainy, that man already had a reserved seat. Danielle showed up again the next day. She said she confronted Derek with the footage. According to her, he denied the affair for the first 30 seconds, denied the switching for the next 20, call everything taken out of context in the minute after that, and then finally broke when Danielle said she had already spoken to a lawyer, the police, and the state medical board. Funny how truth suddenly loves a formal threat. According to Danielle, Derek admitted he had been diverting the pens for almost a year. At first, he claimed it was just once, because Delilah was desperate to lose weight quickly before closing advertising deals, and had said she would reimburse him. After that, it became routine. The clinic sold some legitimate pens and some compounded ones. In certain cases, Derek would switch the contents or simply take part of the shipments before Danielle ever saw them. When he needed to keep up the performance, he used B12 injections, saline solution, or cheaper clinic formulas that Delilah described as support protocols. Derek claimed that Danielle wasn't having great results anyway. So, in the wormy little cave he called the brain, he figured she wouldn't notice. And she didn't, because trust is a beautiful thing. In the wrong hands, it becomes a butcher's tool, but the sewer still had more rot to offer. Danielle wrote that Delilah was not just an occasional mistress to her husband. She was an informal partner in the clinic. Not on paper, of course, because people like that adore crime with clean branding. But she received commissions for referrals, for program renewals, and for premium package sales. In other words, every time Danielle failed, someone profited. Her failure was not an unfortunate side effect. It was literally the business model. The next update came 4 days later and had that final season smell of a bad TV series, when every rotten character suddenly confesses at once. Because the writers are tired to keep the secrets going, Danielle said her mother, Dolores, showed up at her house crying. Not over the daughter who had been deceived, obviously. Let's not get sentimental. She was crying because the family was being torn apart, according to Dolores. Delilah had always been competitive with Danielle since childhood. She had always hated it whenever Danielle got more attention. And, in her mother's own words, she never could stand the idea of you being the stable sister. How sweet. The sister was stealing the husband, diverting medication, participating in medical fraud. And the mother chose to present it like some sort of Barbie rivalry from 1998. Danielle asked whether her mother had known about the affair. Dolores swore she hadn't known everything, but she knew Derek and Delilah talked too much. She knew Delilah had access to the clinic deliveries. She knew Danielle was spending too much money. She knew her daughter cried in the bathroom after family dinners. She knew, basically, enough to assemble the entire puzzle, frame it, and hang it in the living room. But as she herself explained, she didn't want to get involved. In some families, omission is not a character flaw. It's the native language. In the final update, Danielle said she filed for divorce, sued the clinic, filed a police report, and handed authorities videos, messages, statements, and product samples. Delilah lost advertising contracts after the story began circulating locally. The clinic entered operational restructuring, which is the corporate way of saying the ship hit the iceberg, the captain ran off. And the band is still trying to play jazz on the deck, but the biggest twist wasn't even that. Almost 3 weeks later, Danielle returned to Reddit to close out the saga. She said that, in the middle of tests done by a real endocrinologist, a doctor without ring light lighting or a motivational slogan, she also discovered that she had an actual hormonal problem and an eating disorder in development, fueled by cycles of restriction and binging. In other words, she wasn't lazy, she wasn't undisciplined. She wasn't some resistant case invented by marketing. She was a vulnerable woman being ground down by shame, manipulation, and an entire system that profited more the worse she felt. And then came the line that ended the story with a clean slap. Danielle wrote that the biggest weight she lost never showed up on the scale. It was her husband, her sister, the clinic, and the idea that she had to pay dearly just to deserve peace. Finally, a respectable before and after. Honestly, what a filthy story. Reddit exaggerates sometimes, invents things, turns everything into drama. But when a woman spends $50,000 trying to fix her body, while her husband and her own sister turn her insecurity into a diversion scheme, seasoned with adultery, it becomes hard to make jokes. Hard, but not impossible. Because Derek managed to become the kind of man who cheats, steals, lies, manipulates his wife's eating, injects her with placebo, and still poses as a devoted partner. It's like a sewer obtained a social security number. And Delilah, dear Lord, managed to turn sibling envy into a monetization model. That isn't wellness. That's villainy in that packaging, if there's any moral in this story. Maybe it's this: always be suspicious of a clinic that sells self-esteem as a monthly subscription, and of any relative who says the word protocol with too much sparkle in their eyes. And above all, be suspicious of anyone who seems far too interested in managing your shame. Now, I want to know what you think. Was Danielle too naive? Or would anyone surrounded by that level of manipulation have fallen into the same hole? And what was the most absurd part of this story? The scam, the affair, the mother doing overtime as decorative furniture, or the fact that everyone treated her body like a cash register?